And we are now live. Good evening. In my regular way, I say, hey, y'all, hey, it's Tracy Time. Thanks for joining me, Tracy T. This is a special edition for a special reason and a special purpose for Live at Lunch. Live at Lunch is done for the day. I did that earlier to broadcast this. This is Why Should I Vote? We are having a candid conversation this evening with young adults and for young adults, for them to have the opportunity to share their thoughts, ideas, and honestly, their concerns about what is happening, not just with the election, but overall with politics in general. I have been so blessed to have two people that are politicians locally who are young adults, young people of color that are adults, agree to be with me this evening. I told them that I was going to do an introduction, but in the way that's always how, if you grew up in the South or you've ever been to any place of faith, you are always ready. So you know that anything that you're told, you have to stay ready. So I'm telling you now, that's my tip for you. Don't get ready, stay ready, because you never know when you're going to be on the spot, okay? So now I'm going to, if you have not had a chance to know who I am, my name is Tracy Rowe, Tracy T. Rowe of Tracy T. Rowe & Co. I'm sponsoring this event, graciously serving this time this evening with two of our local politicians who are, you know what, I won't even call them politicians. Let me say this. They are two of the civic servants that we have that are dedicating their time and talent and resources to our community. And we're going to start with the person whose beautiful photo you see. And I want to just celebrate her because she is not feeling well this evening. And despite not feeling well, she is still committed to honor her commitment to this platform and to still participate as much as you can. So, Michaelin, I'm gonna go ahead and start with you and allow you to introduce yourself first. And then if any point in time you start feeling, you know, like you just can't move forward, I am absolutely, and I think we'll all nod in agreement with this, giving you a pass. So thank you so much. Go ahead, Michaelin.
Thank you, Tracy. Well, we're gonna push through it because this is very, very important and serious this election year. I don't know if anyone else is like me, but this is making me pretty anxious. Just looking at stuff daily and listening to the current sitting president is just a lot to take in and factor. But thank you for having me on, and with the other panelists and with the people watching on Zoom and on Facebook, just for being initially interested and engaged in trying to play our own roles, because everybody has a role, everybody has a responsibility in civic engagement, whether that means just directly voting, if you have that right, that legal right, or if that means influencing and encouraging others to stay engaged throughout every year, because we have elections all the time. So we have to make sure that not just presidential, but our local elections matter. I'm sure Commissioner Lowry will agree with me. Everything that our everyday life touches is governed by someone who has the power to make decisions affecting our lives. And we have to do our best and our hardest to make sure that we can place folks who we know have our best interests at heart, not just at heart, but at mind, and has the willpower to act on those interests. Because as I'm learning this year, in this wonderful, what month is it? 9th month of my political career, a lot of folks will say they have our interests at heart, but won't make the action move.
Right.
And so it's about that bridge from what you know is right to doing what's right and what's really going to help our people progress and be sustainable in a livable community.
Mm-hmm. We could wrap it up now. Hello.
Somebody... Go home.
That's it, Michael. We'll now go to Commissioner Mikhail Lowry.
Well, good. Thank you, Tracy, for having me and for having us, rather. Again, echoing what our councilwoman just spoke as a second ago, was about the importance of voting. Very important topic, and also a lot of candid questions. I get this all the time. What's in it for me? Why should I vote? Help me understand. And I'm telling you, sometimes it's not an easy answer, because I understand why people are cynical when it comes to voting. I understand why people have some apathy about turning out. That's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're reaching out and telling people the benefits, and also telling people how we need to have a representation of people who look like you in certain areas. And I'll get into more of that later. But at the end of the day, we have to be the change we want to see. And if we want to see change, we want to see improvements, then we have to be civically involved. If nothing else, so that you can just ring on that door, pick up the phone and call the council woman or call the county commissioner and say, hey, listen, I voted for you. This is what I expect to be done in this area. And tell you, and listen, I'm going to say something that's probably blasphemous from a politician.
Say it.
I'm going to say it, but listen, we listen to everybody, don't get me wrong, but when people vote, the ear turns up just a little bit more. Because what we have is a voter file, and everybody knows that, right? So when you talk to a voter, it's like, okay, well, let me make sure I'm listening, get my listening ears on. And now we do that with everybody, but I'm just telling you, you have a little bit, just like in anything in life. Once you're more invested, you have more say so. When you're voting, you're more invested. You have more say so, and that's what we need to encourage more people to do.
That's it. That is the key. You guys are coming in with the full, like 100% full throttle. I love it. We're not going to waste a minute of this, but I want to have the opportunity to introduce the other panelists, the ones who really were the catalyst for me, because I had been just saying to myself, what are we going to do about these young adults? There's so many that are engaged and so many others who want to be engaged and have a better understanding of how to get engaged. And so I had a conversation with BJ Crawford, with Varsha Menon, and with Mia Griffin. And we had what I thought was a pretty candid conversation. They said, look, we don't see ourselves, to your point, Mikhail, we don't see ourselves, and we don't have any connection. We need a bridge. And so the idea that they felt marginalized to some degree, right? And that there was no connection and there was no value or worth in terms of their vote and their voice is troubling to me. And so I immediately finished that meeting and reached out to the two of you, and so grateful that you accepted this opportunity. But I want to give them an opportunity now too to introduce themselves. We'll start with Miss Mia. Yes, unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mia Griffin. I'm not sure what you want me to say, but I'm glad to be here and excited to, just have this conversation. Things that need to be said. So.
Thank you, Mia. I'm grateful that you are here. I'm grateful that you engaged with me and that you allowed your time to be used wisely for this. This is an investment, and I appreciate it. Varsha?
Okay, just getting myself unmuted. Hi, everyone. I'm Varsha Menon. I'm originally from India, if you can already tell from the accent. I'm from a city called Mumbai in India, and I moved here about 5 years ago. I'm an immigrant. Just disclaimer, since I'm an immigrant, I can't actually vote, but I'm really passionate about just politics in general and just being involved in the community that I'm in. So I'm really excited to have this conversation also. There's a lot to be said for sure.
Absolutely. That's an understatement, Varsha. There's a lot to be said. And last but absolutely not least, BJ Crawford.
Good afternoon. Tracy, I want to say thank you for having me. Honestly, tonight, I'm really just curious. I want to learn a lot more. I want to gain a lot more perspective. I'm hoping to gain some understanding, some insight, honestly, just about a lot of things that, honestly, I haven't had too much knowledge or background in. So I'm just trying to gain a lot more knowledge before I do set forth and move in this journey, so to say. But again, I want to say thank you, and I'm just here to learn.
I am grateful, and we're going to learn together. This is one of the things that I really appreciate about being in the position that I am as a 49, almost 50-year-old. First of all, I've always celebrated my birthdays because I think as long as you're here, you need to continue to ask for them. Okay, hello, somebody. But the thing that I love is that there's so much to be gained from young adults, and for people that are older, there's so much, it's just a reciprocity of knowledge sharing, right? Because you give new insight and information, and that is what we want this to be. We have some other people that have joined us, and I want to go over quick general housekeeping for you as you join in. For those that are listening in, you will see that I will navigate and look to my left potentially or your right, And I am monitoring the chat and also the questions that are coming in. So don't think that if I'm not looking at you that I'm not engaged. I am trying to make sure that we have inclusion from everyone. So I wanted to start with the question for Mikkel and for Michaelin. In terms of your service, we know that it is difficult, especially now in America, to be a person of color, and especially difficult to be a young person of color, and then add that you are a person of color who is involved in civic duty or politics. What motivated you to do that? Who would like to go first? And listen, jump in.
Councilwoman, would you like to go first?
Okay, yeah, I can. Tracy, I will first respectfully say that I don't refer to myself as a person of color. I'm Black all day, and I don't refer to anybody else that's Black as a person of color unless that's what they want to be called. I think that when I'm gonna try not to get on the soapbox, but I think that when that happens, especially in the political sphere, it allows an easy way for white people to skirt the issue, especially in the city of Memphis, because we know it's just Black, the majority. So we have to call it out sometimes when we see it. But
I'm gonna come back to that because that's some low hanging fruit you left me. I'm gonna come back to that.
Yeah. But just being a young Black woman who did not have political aspirations, it's been challenging on the front of the status quo. But I have essentially loved every moment because it's just so much to learn. It's so much to see the connections between everyday living and policy. For example, I stay in the North Memphis area, and I see Dr. Atwater on here as well. So when we think about environmental issues, when we think about industrial in our zoning, those were decisions made by folks in positions who were supposed to have our best interests in mind and in action. And yet here we are, 2020, wondering why, we're finding lead in our SES schools, while folks in South Memphis are having problems with being by the depot, while people in Douglas close by the Pennecan explosion are having issues, while people in New Chicago can't use the brown fields that are left from Firestone and other industrial areas. So just connecting instances in history. And my background is education. So I'm an educator with social studies, history, government, economics, all of that. And so it's just fascinating. And so I take pride in the ability to be able to try to make politics relatable to the people that I talk to anyone that I talk to. I always come from the perspective of, I want to know what you care about, and then let me show you how this is all related to politics, everything you care about. So it's been challenging because, a lot of people don't like change. And sometimes it's not for a real negative reason. It's a lot to deal with, cognitive dissonance, just that mere knowing that your comfort level may be disrupted is a real thing that a lot of us, we have to deal with certain situations. So being a Black person in power in Memphis isn't as odd. However, some instances in the way that I'm treated in my position as a young Black woman, I would say is odd. But I think that comes to Black women in a lot of different fronts.
Okay, so before we go to Mikkel, so tell me more about what you said, just treated as a Black woman. What do you mean? Tell me more.
A lot of times as Black women, you aren't listened to. You're ignored. You can have all the degrees in the room and you can say something, and this has happened on council meetings plenty of times. I would say something and then somebody else would come and say the same thing. Another man would come say the same thing, and now it's valid. Now it's truth. Or now you understand. So we see that in a lot of different fronts in corporations and business and education and definitely in politics. So we just have to learn how to trust our Black women, especially those who have the merit and the passion, and also learn how to work with Black women so that we can get our goals accomplished.
You said a lot. I'm just taking notes. I'm trying to make sure we keep up with everything. I don't want to miss anything in that question. Mikhail, same question.
So what made me want to get started?
Yes.
And let me just, before I start off here, I concur in with our councilwoman here and support her as well. But also, look, selfishly, I'm raising 3 Black daughters. So I want her to see positive role models in that light. I want her to understand their voices should be heard. I want to understand they can accomplish anything they want to accomplish. So I'm proud to see folks like Michael and in these positions, as well as Tammy Sawyer on the county commission, who's my colleague. But why I got involved, it's kind of been in my blood, so to speak, for many years. A lot of people may know, about my father, who's been in public office, was one of the longest serving African Americans in the city. But a lot of people don't know that my mother is an ordained minister. And so I've had service from both sides of my family as well. And then also I have a family that's deep rooted, and my stepmother's been an educator, retired from Memphis City Schools as well. So deep rooted in service. And I've always been told that, listen, if it is to be, it's up to me. That's kind of one of those things that's been we've all heard before in our lifetime. But as a younger person at the time who was really interested, I got tired of hearing us talk about the potential of Memphis. Memphis has so much potential. Memphis could be this. Why doesn't Memphis have that? And then I just know what we're capable of, and I'm just tired of us using the word potential when it came to our city. And if we're going to do that, then we need to get involved and get engaged and try some bold new ideas, some things that are not maybe the status quo, that maybe upset the apple cart a little bit, for us to try some things in order to improve and grow. That's what we would do in any sector of our lives. That's what we would do in any business. And that's what we should be doing in government. And so I got started early on. Be honest with you, if you told me I'd run for office, I laughed at you, but early in my life. But I tell you, I owe that to Lemoyne College. I was SGA president at Lemoyne College, and not because I sought it out. Be honest with you, I was a student athlete, fine, just doing what I was doing, but trying to make sure I can make decent grades and hopefully get a job somewhere. And I think I always have to bring her name up because she's no longer with us, but I think we should do that to folks who've encouraged us. So Jodelle Cox was an advisor at Lemoyne College, and she asked me, she said, Mikhail, you should think about running for SGA president. I see you involved in this, you're on this student council, things of that nature. And so I did. And that got me so much exposure to how things are kind of negotiated from a sort of perspective, got me in the rooms with politicians, got me in the room with business leaders on behalf of Lemoyne College. And I'm passionate about Lemoyne. I'm passionate about South Memphis, South City, because that's what raised me to be the man I am today. And so I had to make sure I was getting involved. I'm honored to be the county commissioner that represents that area. I represent not only a large majority of South Memphis, all of downtown, a good portion of Frazier as well, and a small little portion of North Memphis. But if we want change, then we can't affect it from the sidelines. We got to get engaged. And that doesn't mean everyone has to run for office. Support somebody that's running for office. Donate to someone who's running for office. Vote and then get on the phone and tell those people that you support it, that this is the change you need to see that are in office. But I believe so much in Memphis. I love this city, was born here like a lot of us are on this call. And I wanted to be the best and it can be. And I know we can compete with everybody given the right opportunity and the right resources. So that's why I got involved. That's why I threw my hat in the ring. And that's what I hope to be able to do when I leave the seat, because it doesn't belong to any of us. We're here for a short amount of time to affect as much change as we can, and then we move on so somebody else can do the same. And that's my goal.
That's good. And you're in for the right reasons. Good night. How many times, though, do we know that there are people who get in office for the wrong reason? right? And
Sure.
Dr. Atwater, I see you nodding your head. Tell me what your thoughts are on people that get in office for the wrong reason. And then that helps to sour some of the young adults in terms of how they think that, you know, politics and the whole idea of being involved in civic service and duties. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Atwater?
Well, I'm not really technology wise, so can you hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. I am so elated to be part of this panel today. I wanted to come in and just be silenced to listen to the young people. I want them to know that I have their support 250%. I am proud of them. And it's time for the elders to pass the torch. If you've been in office for 5, 10 years or whatever, it's time to move on. We need new blood. We need new energy. We need new ideas. So I'm excited about these young people. I look at them and they're shaking and moving. They have new ideas. I think that more of the elders should support them in their endeavor, their political ambition. But nevertheless, it takes a whole village. What I see now, as far as the young people, Michael and Easter and Mikhail, what they're doing, I am so proud. JB Smiley, they are truly shakers and movers. They are truly morally intact. And so it's my wish as an elder in the community for some of the older politicians to bow out gracefully and move on. It's time for us to sit back, watch the young people. Yes, they will make mistakes. We all have, but we need to support them. We may not agree with them because we're in different generational space, but we do need to let them take over now. It's time. I'm a community activist. I'm still on the battlefield fighting, but I know that somewhere down the road, I want young people to come along and take over so I can sit down and just watch. So to come to an end, I am just elated that these young people have taken that political role. And I am especially grateful and appreciative of Michael and Easter Thomas. And I have to be honest with you about as an elder, she's so studious. I didn't know that she had that will to fight in her. But watching her from the sideline, that's another Harriet Tubman. She'll just ease up on you. So I'm excited to see what she's going to do. If I had my way, most of the young people that's in politics now, I hope they will look to run for mayor, run for governor. Don't stop on city council or county commission. Just keep pressing on.
That is wonderful advice, Dr. Atwater. Thank you so much for being with us this evening and for all of the contributions that you have done on the battlefield and continue to support. It is important for us. I want you being part of this is so special to me because I want to hear now, based on what you've said and what we've heard from Michael and from Mikhail, what are the young, what I'm calling the young panelists? What are your thoughts on it? BJ, Varsha, and Mia, what are you thinking as you hear the reason that they got involved, knowing that there's an elder among us now who has said, you know, we need to pass the baton, that it's time for the young adults to pick up the baton and take it and carry it on. What are your thoughts?
Are you talking to me?
I want the younger adults to weigh in on what you said, Dr. Atwater.
I can go. And I just wanted to add, that's just so amazing to hear and so encouraging to hear, because when I hear everyone, talk about how they go into politics and their journey and their backstory, and it's nice to hear, just like you said, people getting into politics for the right reasons. And exactly like Dr. Atwater said, having fresh ideas, having that fresh energy. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that we don't take the experience and the knowledge that, older people have in this space and in this front. But it's so encouraging to see, young people just going at it and just getting, whatever they're trying to achieve, just getting it. And it's 100% true and just so on the mark for it.
DJ, you guys can keep yourselves unmuted so that you can just weigh in whenever you like. I want to ask a question based on what Varsha just said. What happens though when, and if this is a question for any of you, what happens when the baton isn't passed, when the lessons are not taught or learned from the elders to the younger adults, and we have these gaps, these voids that exist from one generation to another, where we have people who are now young adults who don't feel that it's necessary for them to be engaged in what is happening in their communities? What happens?
Excuse me, from what I got from both of those perspectives was honestly the sense of awareness. Saying that it was in my blood, saying that in college, and certain things that prompted and promoted me toward this journey or this field, it just offered another sense of awareness that allowed them to move in this light. And just speaking for myself, so to say, I'm just now getting to a point of seeing or being aware of some of the things that are going on. So it's honestly, I don't want to say it's a drop in the baton, but it's more so just trying to share enough batons at one time. I think it's a lot happening, it's a lot moving on, and especially with our generation, it's a lot to keep up with. And trying to play all of these different stages and different levels, if it's not positive and direct information that we can fully trust, it's really hard to indulge in if you don't know where you're really getting it from.
Okay. So it's a matter of awareness early on and then access to the information is what I hear you saying. Is that right, BJ?
At least from my perspective, yes.
Okay, sure.
Also, Tracy, I just wanted to add. I'm sorry, continue.
Who, me? No, you.
Yeah.
You.
Are you sure?
Okay. Okay, well, I was just gonna say, there is a huge gap, but what I hear people, I hear us saying that it just takes willing individuals. And like Mikhail said, you have to be the change you want to see. And it just have to be willing individuals to do that research and find that information and just, make stuff happen.
Yeah, and kind of, going off of that as well, it's really easy to get, and saying this in the best way possible, it's really easy to get jaded by politics in general, because sometimes it's frustrating to see things that should happen and are not happening, right? Stuff that you would think are no-brainers, and they wouldn't happen. So I think it's just important to keep having those conversations and not stop getting engaged in it, because it's easy to forget when there's so many people in the world and so many people in the country, the part that we play, young adults and just people in general, each individual vote plays in the collective. So I guess keeping that interaction and that engagement and keeping those conversations open and be willing to hear perspectives and different kinds of things, it really opens things up for me and people in general, I feel. So that's a big part of closing that gap, is to not try our best not to be jaded by politics.
Mm-hmm. And how do we get to that point where we're not jaded by politics? Case in point, one of the questions that I had from a young adult was this, and anyone can answer. How do I trust that my vote matters if when we have an electoral college in key states and I'm not a resident of a key state, then what difference does it make if I vote? What do you say to that?
I'll speak to that real quickly because I hear that too, and that's tough. Now, people say that a lot in Tennessee. Now, the numbers show that Tennessee can be changed. It can be a blue state. It's been there before from a gubernatorial standpoint, and people forget Harold Ford Jr., black man, lost the Senate race by like 3 percentage points. And that's with them throwing all kind of smear and things of that nature. It was around, remember those commercials that were done? It was terrible. But that shows that the numbers are there. It can be changed, number one. Two, I'll say to this, people, let's just take out the electoral college. First of all, be engaged, have your voice heard. Let's talk about our representation in our juries. People forget that. So how are juries selected? Well, by voting rolls. So then we have black people that are incarcerated or brought up on Trump charges or whatever it may be. Then you say, wow, that should not have happened. Then you look at the jury of their peers, looks nothing like the individual. And that's because certain people say, I'm not voting, but voting is how you get selected for jury. We should all be like, great, I got jury duty. Yeah, it's a pain. Hopefully your work should have no problem. The law is they should give you a week off or whatever that may be for that. But think about how many times we see, especially with brutality, no matter where it is, police brutality, wrongful deaths, whatever it may be. There's all type of violence sometimes in our community. But imagine if you would be able to have representation of people who look like you on those juries to help make the decisions. So that's what I tell people when we start talking about electoral college. I say, okay, well, forget all that. Okay, I hear you. We're in a red state. If that's what you want to believe. It can be flipped, but I hear you. I'm not going to dismiss that point. That's a very valid point. But then I'll bring it back locally. What could that do? What your voice being heard? What could that do for representation locally? So that's why I take it from there. When people talk about the electoral college, I agree. It's tough, especially when we have the popular vote. We had, obviously the president we have now lost by almost 3 million votes or more from a popular vote standpoint. The system is what the system is, but it still doesn't mean you should not get involved. Don't get jaded because your voting have impact on what things are done here locally.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts from anyone else? Want to weigh in on the electoral college versus no electoral college? And then I'll add, if we are in a position where we don't like the electoral college, then do you need to then vote and be actively engaged so that if you don't like the electoral college, you can ask and vote and empower other people to change the electoral college?
That's
we got quiet, Mikhail. Watch out now.
Well, you know what? Because the electoral college, again, I think all of us agree that is an outdated system. But just like anything else in life, the system benefits some or a large majority. So they don't want to change because they'll say that they're the more populous cities like New York, LA, Houston, Chicago, Atlanta, what do people look like that live in those cities? Then they'll say that those more traditionally progressive cities choose our leaders. So, what we need to do now, I think, is not worry about the electoral college, is go vote. There was 100 million people that didn't vote in our last election from a presidential standpoint compared to previous presidential elections. 100 million. So let's go vote, right? And show up. We can put who we want to in office and then go about and bring that change. So that's my comment.
That takes me to another fantastic point, Mikhail. Okay, so if you have been exposed to any recent reports or posts on social media with regard to entertainers, and Michael and I'll use your term, instead of saying African-American or person of color, I'm gonna say Black men. The Black men that are so influential because they have huge followings as celebrities. Ice Cube, we'll use Ice Cube because he's the most recent and most vocal. Ice Cube has come out and said recently that the Black vote should be earned and that we should withhold the Black vote until we get what we have coming to us in terms of the onus that we feel is upon us in terms of the rights and the things that we have that are on the ticket for the Democratic vice president and president. Here's my question. One, do you agree with him? And two, if you do, I want to understand what's motivating you to agree. And then if you don't agree with him, same thing. I want to understand what is making you disagree with him.
Who's that to, Tracy?
Everybody. Okay, you know what, Mikhail, I'm going to make it to be someone specific. I'm going to ask BJ, since he's the Black man other than you, I'm going to ask BJ, what are your thoughts as a Black man to hear someone like Ice Cube, who has come from, beginning his career as a rapper and who has now elevated his status and has shifted, right? He has shifted. What are your thoughts about hearing him say now that that you need to have your vote earned in order for you to support a Democratic, that basically we're being taken for granted and we need to get something for our vote?
Honestly, just right off the bat, and I think I told you, I'm not even on social media, so I haven't heard anything about this, but I I'm not going to say I can understand his perspective, but at the same time, again, I'm going to go back to the whole point of just being aware. And I think once you do get to a point like Ice Cube and you see how connected you are with everything and how connected politics is with everything that you do, it does make a little bit more sense. And like Mikhail said, being from the South Memphis area, I'm not thinking about politics. I was just trying to think, how do I get to college? And then once I got to college, it was, how do I get out of college? And from that point, it was, okay, so what is this? What's that? Why do I vote? Who am I voting for? But it was never really taught. And it was there, it was present. But so again, to go back to Ice Cube, to say I understand his perspective, I can say I almost understand his awareness of it. I can kind of say that I get why he feels like that in the perspective of seeing how influential it actually is. But at the same time, I think that's a really hard message to cascade down.
And is this the time for the message to be conveyed?
Is this the time for I think this is a time for a message. I just think we, and I say we, I mean everyone, has to be very strategic and very cognizant about how you cascade your message. I'm one that believes in more so action and speaking. So I think it's one of those type of processes.
All right. Who on here thinks that what Ice Cube said may be solid in his purpose, but misguided in his timing? Okay, Mikhail, tell me why.
And let me start off by saying I love Ice Cube. That's all in my era. So, but I think what's the better message from him is that the vote is earned during the campaign, because the system conforms to whoever's involved. Whatever it may be, like think about it. If you had a business or whatever it may be, if you had a product and only a certain amount of people bought your product, then that's who you're marketing to. So and that's true in life. So in government, if only a certain amount of people are voting, then the politicians continue to pander to that same demographic and nothing changes. So the vote has to be earned during the campaign. I'm more the premise of, let's show up in a large number to understand the power we have. So you'll see, look at this block that we now have. Look what we have been able to do for you. Look what we've been able to put you in office. If these things don't happen, you'll see it someplace else. People need to understand and see that you're serious before they can come back and, and that is taking you for granted. And I understand what you're saying from the premise. We should not just be beholden our vote to anyone. But during this time, considering the candidates we have between, Trump and Vice President Joe Biden, I think it's pretty clear cut. So in this instance, I think we should show up in droves, in huge numbers, so the party that we support understands we cannot take this vote for granted. We can't take the Black women vote for granted, who shows up in large numbers. We cannot take the Black vote that just votes in the Democratic bloc for granted. Right. And then you make your demands and then you speak in that case. Again, you can't, we need to see some plans in the campaign. What are you going to do for Black community? What are you going to do for HBCUs? What are you going to do for undeserving communities, urban communities? We need to see that in the campaign plan before you get elected. But at the same time, when people understand you have power, you got to show them. And that's what I believe we need to be doing as a voting bloc.
Mm-hmm. And then here's a question as a follow-up, and Michael, and I'd love for you to answer this. What happens as a Black woman, what happens if you cannot convince or persuade, implore, or otherwise your peers, right? You're an educator, so you know other Black women that are educators. You are a politician, so you know other Black women that are young politicians and older politicians. What happens if you are not in a position, and let me say this, let me preface this by saying, I have done my due diligence to encourage and implore and even incite my family members to be engaged at the local and state and national level. And I have not yet succeeded with some of them, no matter what I say. As a Black woman, and these are to my Black female family members, okay? How do you get them involved, Michael? And what do you do? What do you say?
Ooh, that's the hardest question we done, heard so far. You know, it's a struggle in every sector or how we slice it up of but what I really see the hardest from my experience through campaigning and then just comparing to before I even started campaigning and now is my age group. Millennials, I don't want to make a blanket statement, but we got some work to do. I just don't understand why are we not, even if it's just presidential or even if it's just registration, what is the disconnect? And me and my other friends who may be also young politicians, we just sit and argue and cuss and fuss about this all the time. Like, what is our problem? And I don't know anybody that has put their finger on what in the world can make millennials vote. I will say that with my family and with my friends and with folks I know, when I was running, I could definitely see a change in their perspective on voting in politics. And I think it was because they knew somebody who was trying to get, in there. And so that made them pay attention and that made them share with others. And that even if it was a small one, reach one, I saw that tenfold across my campaign. My group of friends, I'm sure we were all registered. I'm sure we probably all voted like our mothers told us to. But the fact that now you're looking at who's running, you're asking who should you vote for clerk and for judge, and now you're telling your friends to go vote, or family the same. And I would just love when especially in these local district races, McKay, I'm sure you got this a lot too. Family be all over the city. It's like, all right, I'm going to vote today. I'm voting for you. It's like, no, cause you ain't voting for me. But the people in your district, this is who you can, this is who I recommend who you can vote for. Because I'm not in your district, and then we get into a whole conversation on that. But their initial passion was because it was relatable. They had a connection. And I think the more we show folks how politics is relatable to their lives and where the connection is probably going to be our best bet on whatever voter engagement strategies we're trying. But like I said, with my age group, I don't know. I don't know if Mia, BJ, or Varsha got anything on that. I'm so confused and frustrated. And I guess this is appropriate because it's late at night, so I can bring it up. But when I was watching that episode of P Valley, and they had the petition signing at the club, and everybody who came in had to sign the petition.
Right.
I was like, oh, okay. That's a way, even if you don't know what you signing, you don't know what you're signing, it's standing in between something that you want to do, and now you're gonna have to look at it. And that's also with Keisha Bottoms in Atlanta. Her flyers and her people were at the clubs. They were at the clubs, they were everywhere with the celebrities. They got to the folks. And we just have to exacerbate all our resources trying to get our local celebs and influencers involved. Because I think with millennials, it's a lot about influencers. So we just, I don't know, if y'all got the answers, let me know. That's what we're trying to do. But it's just like all the traditional things don't work. How Ford Jr. made I know Mikhail brought him up earlier, how they made their namesake and beating the path and doing all that hard work and getting all those people registered to vote. These ain't the same people. And so we're really going to have to put our heads together to see what can we do to really make a difference and increase in voter turnout.
Varsha wanted to weigh in. She put her before you finish, Michael. And go ahead, Varsha.
So I had all of my hands up, you know, when she asked that question, and I think that's a very good question. I kind of, and you know, I can, I come like I really don't know what classifies as a millennial and what classifies as a Gen Z, because the definitions are different everywhere. So as a possible Gen Z and a possible millennial, I think, you know, I can definitely talk about my point of view in this, and just conversations that I've had with my friends and you know, groups of people that I interact with. And a lot of the times it's kind of a couple of I get a lot of people who say that, you know, there's no point in voting because their voice is not heard. They feel like, you know, there's just this general distrust of the government, you know, and this is, I feel like this is universal, not just in America. This is everywhere. Like if you talk to young people in any country, you know, they'll probably tell you the same thing, is that government is complicated and they don't want to get into that that, you know, that space. But you know, what's important is that we just keep, you know, and we've had people that in the office that we don't agree with. We have people that, you know, we wish that we had seen better people in the office, you know. But the key is to really keep trying and keep voting and keep being engaged. And another thing is, you know, and I think we brought this up earlier as well, but representation is so important. You know, seeing people of color in office, seeing, you know, Black people in office, like every kind of race that you can imagine. Right now, it seems like it's very very uniform with the people who seem to be in office, with the way that they look and the kind of experiences that they've had, and just kind of where they've come from. It seems to be the same kind of people getting into office, but nowadays we're kind of seeing a little bit of representation of different kinds of people from different walks of life, and we see a little bit more representation in us. I feel like there was a dip off in our engagement, you know, in 2016, because we were like, you know, a lot of people were like, well, what's the point in voting? Like it's all rigged anyway. Like I got a lot of that, you know, like when we had these conversations, it's all, you know, predetermined, and what's the point of even voting? And the importance of having these conversations is to realize that if we don't do something about it, if we don't keep actively talking about it, it's always going to seem distrustful. It's never going to seem like something you can engage with until you engage with it, right? And it's a hard transition to make that, but once you do, it's just a whole new world. You find out so much more. You find out what you're passionate about, you know, the issues that you're passionate about. Like I can give you an example, climate change. That's a big thing, you know, amongst Gen Z and millennials. That seems to be the group of people who care about it the most. Not saying that, you know, the older generation doesn't. I'm sure they do. There's people, but it seems to be a lot of the younger people who are very vocal about that. And, you know, I recently read Scientific American has, for the first time in 175 years, endorsed a presidential candidate, you know, and has openly showed their support. And that's huge. You know, they're saying for the sake of health and science, you need to vote blue. Like that's kind of the, you know, and things like that gets us more engaged, you know, finding out more about what we're passionate about and how it directly affects us and our future. Because, you know, and I mean this in the best way possible, but we're all selfish in our own ways, and we want to see how things can get better for us, right? And when you speak to those things and when you speak to those points, that immediately gets our engagement going, and we're like, okay, well, this is something I should care about. You know, why am I not doing more to care about it?
We have a comment from a viewer. Javante Cortez Porter says, how do we increase civic engagement among the millennials? How do we do it? Mia, you wanted to say something. You want to address that?
I'm not exactly sure how to get the engagement. I think that's what we're, you know, working on actively. But I do want to make a comment on the disconnect.
Okay.
I believe we are moving surely, but slowly. I think when I got like really engaged was when Keisha Lance Bottoms, I believe that's the first Black female mayor in Atlanta. Oh my gosh, that really just brightened my eyes. Like this can really happen. I think the disconnect is seeing that there isn't much representation, but honestly, it's levels to this. we can't change the votes if we don't see representation. So I feel like the more we vote, the more we see change, the more we can have more people in office to make those changes happen. I don't think the people that's in office want to make those changes happen because it's been stagnant for years. So, yeah, I think just staying consistent will help also. I remember at a time I really didn't care about politics. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm just gonna be completely honest, but staying consistent personally made me just more vigilant and just pay attention more. So I think as millennials, we are more like, we're more of realists than, you know, visionaries, if that makes sense. So I think the disconnect was we saw we never benefited from politics, you know, but, and also like social media right now, it rules the world. So like oftentimes we see injustice just plastered everywhere. And that just, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. It makes us believe nothing can happen, I guess. But I think we should vocalize and show more representation, if that makes sense. Like we should show that voting is cool. Voting is what's gonna happen, not seeing everything being plastered everywhere. So
well,
that's
so
just
let me ask as a follow-up. Let me ask as a follow-up to that, Mia, if you wouldn't humoring me here for a moment. You mentioned that you weren't initially concerned or at all involved and engaged in politics, and I appreciate your candor. What was it, aside from Keisha Lance Bottoms, what was it that made the shift for you to say, okay, this is it, I need to get engaged? What was it?
What was it? I really believe it was Keisha for me. It was Keisha for me. I don't know. She's a Black lady and she's killing it in politics. So it was the relatability for me. Okay. I'm not sure what everyone else's trigger is, but for me, it was her. And I actually spoke about her in like an interview. And it was great to, you know, go on and on about it. I don't know. It was just the representation, really.
And do you think that it was because she connected to the point about, well, Michael talked about going to P-Valley, well, on the show, P-Valley, that they met people where they were, and that she took that same kind of approach that made it more connected? Because she's not the first Black female mayor in the country, but she's the first female mayor that you've been able to connect and relate to. Do you think that it's more approachable to you than maybe other mayors in the past?
She just seems like my aunt. I don't know. She's relatable for me. She's relatable to me.
So you know, you see yourself.
Yeah, she's relatable to myself. So I think it's gonna take millennials, you know, just trying to find a relatability in the situation, or just finding what makes them more engaged. But for me, it was being able to relate to her.
And many people have mentioned representation, and that you see yourself. The conversation that we four had was about being able to have a bridge and being connected. One of the comments that Javante said was he couldn't agree more with one of the comments, that you need to be willing. And he says that you must remember that education is the key, that we have to educate and expose our young people to these conversations, to politics in general. How do we do that? How do we make, as you said, Mia, how do we make, and Mikhail, I'm going to ask you this, how do we make politics and the education of politics cool for the millennials and Gen Zs?
You know, that's a good question. I think we start early. We start by going to schools and having these conversations about talking about the effects that government can have. And, you know, sometimes politics gets a kind of a bad name, right? So what does your government do for you? Because it's in every sector of everyone's life, no matter who you are. So starting early by talking in schools and talking about what government does, what government doesn't do. I think getting engaged folks early on in the process is beneficial. Not only, people can't vote at certain ages, obviously, if you're in grade school, but there's nothing wrong with, we're talking about exposing them to mentors, exposing them to internships, exposing them to see how aspects of the government is affecting their families' lives and speaking their terms. That's what I think we need to do to get people who are younger to get involved early, because let's face it, a lot of people don't vote until it affects them earlier. So the things you're talking about from millennials, Gen Z, whatever it was, Gen X at the time, this story doesn't change. What happens is people get older, they have children, they own a house, they start paying taxes. Then they just say, wait a minute, my tax rate's what? That's when it starts hitting you in the pocket is when people really get involved. And so when you're younger and you got an apartment, you're paying rent, no taxes, right? You just got your first job and that's cool. You're just happy to be there. I know that's how I felt. I was happy to be there. I'm glad I'm here. And so, but then, so you think about it, I don't have children. Why, what they're doing in the school system doesn't bother me right now. I don't have children. So you really have to talk about, to break that down, break down those barriers and talk about, wait a minute, let's talk about, well, you did go to Central High School, right? Like BJ did, right? Do you know what they're doing over in Central's neighborhood? Oh, don't you feel passionate about that? Oh, you went to Kirby, right? You know what they're doing over the neighborhood for Kirby? You know what they're doing to your middle school? You know what they're doing to the neighborhood that you came up from? You got to touch them to where they have some sense of involvement to it matters to them. And that's how we get other people involved. We got to start having those conversations early to show that what happens matters and it affects not maybe their upbringing, it affects their school, affects their neighborhoods, or this have an effect on their parents. And we have to speak in those terms.
Yeah. And it was mentioned earlier about watching and the impact of seeing so many horrible, what I consider violent, systemic racism happening with law enforcement today. Now, I am not at all condoning any behavior that is attack against police officers. So let me be on record saying that. However, as I say, we recognize and identify that there is systemic racism that is occurring in this country. It is always, to the point that Mia made, blasted on social media, so much so that almost immediately, because we have the opportunity now to go live, that we see that happening. The Breonna Taylors of the cases, right? The most recent, where the family had a settlement with for $12 million. Well, to so many people, that doesn't seem like justice. And so then they align justice, or the lack thereof, with politics, and they put them hand in hand. What do we say, Michaelin, to the young adults who are witnessing this, who connect the comments that I call him the occupant, say after these things happen, and then they become apathetic to it and not moved? Instead of it moving them to action and saying, I want to get engaged, it becomes an apathetic response. What do we say to ignite that flame?
I think that's kind of a two-part question too, because not only do we see that nationally, but we also see that locally. We see the media in Memphis talk about our children as if they are afraid of them, as if they do not want them around, and they bring down property values, and this is what we hear. I'm a high school educator, by the way, so I'm talking with them about it daily. This is what they hear, see, and feel, every day. And so when you have that as a layer, but then you add that on to someone doing this on a national stage with no repercussion, it does make you apathetic. And me personally, I don't even watch that man on TV. I read, synopses of stuff later, but just watching live speeches is just like, I just can't do it. I just look at it later to see what's going on, to make sure I'm staying informed. But it does make people apathetic, and it's hard when you seen Nancy Pelosi and whomever else try to impeach it, it doesn't happen. Or people try to speak out against it and nothing happens. So it is, and that's why I said I started off in the beginning that I still have anxiety about it, because I'm just like, I don't know. 4 years ago, I went to bed on election night saying, oh, they ain't gonna do that. That ain't gonna happen. I'm gonna wake up and, we're gonna be looking at Hillary and all that. And I was jaded the first 3 weeks. I'm sure a lot of other people were for probably different amounts of time, because I'm like, we, I don't want to say y'all, because we, not having a vote is a vote. No vote is a vote. It's a vote for the other way. So we really let this man in here, and then we really got him in here for 4 years, and we are really going through these issues. It's just unbelievable. And if I wasn't so involved and informed, I probably would have feelings of apathy too, because it's just fed to you daily and constantly. And then, like I said, layered that on state level, passing laws that outlaw protesting in the Capitol, when those are the people in there who are fighting against Black and brown faces and bodies. And then that local layer as well, it's hard out here for our children. It's a daily mental struggle that a lot of us, if we're not in constant communication and contact with our youth, and I'm talking like 25 under, then we may not understand the viewpoints that they have. But as I say often, locally, state and nationally, but especially locally, we have to do better at getting our city prepared for this next generation, because the more we leave them out, the more we are allowing the opportunity for failure of our city, because there will be no one to steer things in a better direction. And if things are on the right track, staying constant, there will be no one to fill these jobs. There will be no one to have leaders. There will be no one to keep pushing the culture forward. So I understand the apathy. The kids that I deal with every day, they're always saying, I gotta leave. I gotta leave. But then it's like, when we talk about Trump, it's like, well, go where? Because if this is what's going on nationally, what do I do? And so that hopeless thought comes in. And so, yeah, if I wasn't as informed and engaged as I am, I probably would be more apathetic than I already am.
So then, BJ, how do we go from apathy to engagement?
That's a great question. Honestly, so I've had a few thoughts about some of the points, and I don't know. I don't have any answers whatsoever. But just from a lot of the conversations I've had to kind of backtrack a little bit to connect with our generation, I don't want to generalize, but we like things to be very convenient, like really convenient. And from my experience, not too much about politics is that convenient right now. It's a lot to try to figure out. It's a lot to do. It's a lot to try to find. You have to really go do work to get engaged. And everything else in our generation, and again, I'm generalizing, has kind of been catered to us. I mean, you watch the Super Bowl, you don't have to look up anywhere to find it. It's there. NBA Finals, it's there. But politics somehow hasn't made that transition, at least in my world, to relate or to bridge in that same extent, so to say. And I know it's different, it's entertainment and one is politics, but to get to that point, I think it is a point of connection and a bridge. And again, to go back, a lot of this politics, it hit me, like Mikhail said, when it affected my paycheck. And that was something I was like, oh, this is real. I never got anything outside of that. And that was one of my first jobs after college. And I realized, oh, this stock market means this and that means that. And oh, okay, I see why this is important. But thankfully, I've been in a place to where I'm around that type of information. I'm doing those type of things. But a lot of my peers, they're not in that space to even be able to see that picture yet. So it's really hard to find that needle to thread, so to say, to get them to say, hey, let's go get engaged. Why? And like Mikhail said, honestly, I mean, if you don't have kids, if you don't have this, and you're not paying property taxes, and you're not worried about this and that, it is more so, well, the stimulus that I'm getting from social media says there's a lot more other stuff going on that's a lot more important. And I think that's where a lot of our attention has been taken to. And social media is one of those things where it makes it easy to go get. It makes it right there in your face. And politics just isn't that for our group right now. It is not. And I think older generations, it was Monday Night Football and politics. For us, it's what's on Instagram and social media. But those two haven't merged, so to say, at least in my viewpoint, to really attract us to the point of engaging. But to go back to your question of engaging, I think we just got to make it convenient somehow. I mean, we can do everything else on the cell phone. I think there has to be a way to find a way to do something to make it more convenient for people in my generation to say, oh, this really does touch my day-to-day life.
Mikhail, you and I have had the benefit of being employed for more years than some of the other panelists here. What do you say in response to BJ in terms of making it convenient? That's a compelling argument that so many of the things that have once been antiquated have now been, modernized and updated. As a commissioner, that there are some meetings that you've had and some processes that you experience that are anything but convenient and easy. How do you answer the question to that in terms of where we move this needle forward with politics?
I agree with BJ wholeheartedly. It should be more convenient. We pay our taxes electronically. We do a lot of things electronically. It would be great if we could vote electronically. It makes sense. We do so much of our lives are involved with that. But again, the system benefits some, so therefore they don't want change. And they don't want to make it convenient for you to vote. We've got a president right now that doesn't even want you to send in your ballots. He doesn't even want you to do mail-in voting in a pandemic because it's convenient. So, why I agree with BJ, and I agree we should be doing something like things like that. Again, we got to figure out a way how we push through that and how we still resonates how important voting is. You're right, BJ. Other generations fought so hard for this, and they showed up because they didn't see representation. So it was about just getting a foot in the door, just seeing some representation. And now that we see representation, it's not that as important sometimes to some younger people. It's like, well, we had Barack and, Keisha's up there, that's cool. And I may live in a city with a black mayor and whatever it may be. So we got seats at the table, maybe not enough, but we have seats, we have representation. So we got to figure out how to get beyond just make sure you have a seat at the table to now, how do we speak to folks and making sure they have to push through some of this convenience? We live in a convenient world. We want convenience. We all want convenience, but we got to figure out what we're doing now when it comes to voting, doing for the greater good and pushing through that. Yeah, I may have to go stand in line, or I may have to leave the convenience of my home to go vote. But it's that important. And one thing on earth that is important enough to maybe inconvenience is voting. And that's what we have to kind of convey to everyone.
We talked about, and Varsha, you were so politically correct and gingerly in your approach of saying that some of the same people and representation comes from the same process. I say blue is blue. We have a lot of older white men who are in the positions of power. And when you see that, you don't see yourself. And so then perhaps it's a reason for disconnect. We have, to Mikhail's point, representation to some degree now, but we know that our representation doesn't necessarily represent our community. And so we want to have improved engagement. We need to have improved engagement so that the politicians that represent and that literally look like the people in the communities where they serve, right? And we don't have that. Dr. Atwater, you have blessed us by being here tonight. From an elder's perspective, how do we not become satisfied with the limited representations, these, pepper flakes, as I call them, in spots of sugar, or pepper flakes in a sea of salt? How do we not allow ourselves to get satisfied and placated with having those one-off small percentages of representation that we see? What do we do to just move past that and look at that and expect more?
Okay, I have been intentionally not speaking because I wanted to hear from the young people, but I think that we need a true political plan of action to move forward. If I had my way, because I'm very intolerant of nonsense and people that's not representing our best interests, I would love to see the city council, the county commissioner, majority of them be recalled. Because if they have not done anything in the last 2 or 3 years, I don't think they want to do anything. I'm working with a group that we're getting ready to implement a progress report on every city council and county commissioner and both mayors. We want to, because we have put out questionnaires, and those questionnaires have given us answers to things we thought was happening. So now that we are going to put out progress reports, we want to see, once we put it out, what is going to happen in the community. So for the young people, I would say that they have to get focused and get more cohesive. I was looking at the numbers, and I have truly enjoyed this meeting. But what I'm disappointed about is, where's the young people? The numbers are not there. And that's why I was listening to Michael very closely. How do you get the millennium to the table? I think that with my generation, I know I have paid my due because I'm still fighting. We should have done more. We should have mentored more to the people, the young people, but we didn't. So how do we move forward? I am expecting for the young people to take the torch and they come up with their own independent answer to how we're going to correct this problem. Personally, I believe we need to recall. That's my answer. Cut to the chase. When I look at New Chicago, and I speak of New Chicago, that's where my heart is at, and it looks like a third world country. And I'm appalled to see how many millions and billions of dollars going downtown and down Poplar and uptown and in other places. Taxation without representation is a problem to me. And it's really a violation of civil rights and human rights. We need people at the table that's going to stand for true conviction on how we're going to, and not go along to get along. I think the majority of our political leadership has been going along to get along. And so now we have to go back and regress and put in the people that truly have the needs, the concerns of all the people in the city of Memphis. And I think it's very disheartening to see a city of 65% continually to vote for people that do not have their best interests in heart. And that's why I'm very excited about the young people. They on the battlefield now. I watch them closely. And again, I've been very respectful, because in my generation, they used to say, do as I say, not as I do. It was something like that, because as a young person, I didn't listen to them. So I don't know how to repeat that. So I don't believe in telling young people what to do. It's their opportunity to take this generation, this environment, or whatever they have to do, because they are going to be the heirs of it. So it's not my responsibility to dictate to them what they should do. It's my responsibility in my generation to support them in their endeavors. So that's why I've been very quiet, very attentive, have truly enjoyed it. But again, I've been very disappointed, because I was looking for the young people to show up and show out. And I kept looking at the number of where they're at. So that is a big concern of mine, because if we're going to pass the torch, they need to show up. and not only show up physically, but they need to have a plan of action to counter some of the things that we know is wrong. We know it's unethical. We know it's morally not sound, but we're going along with it. So that's not anyone else's problem. That's our problem now. We have to turn in and address some of the issues that we need to address, because no one is going to come and save us. We will have to save ourselves.
So I have one final question. I want to get comments, and then I'll let you, as we round out this fantastic. It's been engaging. I think that, to your point, Dr. Atwater, we absolutely can benefit from more people engaging and involving themselves. I think this is a great start. I think that I can tell you that I am vowing to do my part. I regularly communicate and talk about voting, and have been since before the election that we had in August. And we'll continue to do that even beyond the November 3rd election, because we have local elections that are coming up. We have elections every year, right? And so we know that this November election is really vital, but that we have some changes that we need to make locally as well, to your point. I learned by conducting my own voters registration at an event over the weekend that there were some people who checked their voters registration status and had been purged from the system. It is disturbing, and it is literally cause for alarm in my opinion. People who literally voted in August on the August 6th election had been purged out of the system. What are we going to do about that? Mia, what happens if you check your voters registration status and you find that you are not registered to vote?
I'm making some calls. I don't know. My vote is gonna count one way or another. So I'm just very intentional about what I do, about how I go about things. And if I found out that my vote, if I know I'm registered and the day of election is saying that I'm not, I would have to make some calls. I don't know the answer, but I will find out the answer.
Yeah. So one of the things I can tell you to do proactively is to go and check your registration status. You can go to vote.org and check your registration status. I encourage all of you to tell people that. It is important. About half of the people that I connected with over the weekend had been purged out of the system, even though they voted in August. That is troubling. The other thing I would like to find out is from you, what are your thoughts? And we'll go one by one. For the people who said my person isn't isn't running, I wanted Sanders and I wanted Keisha Bottoms, or I wanted Stacey Abrams, and they're not in there, so I'm not voting. What do you say to that, Commissioner Lowry?
I put myself on mute. Again, you have to find, okay, well, who's speaking more to the issues, like your candidate that you were rooting for, than not. That happens to all of us. We all during a Democratic primary picked somebody that we were with because they spoke to us, and for whatever reason that may be. And then as the people, lose or drop out, then we got to figure out, okay, who speaks most to me now. So your number one tier candidate doesn't always win, but that doesn't mean that you can't support someone else who speaks to 60% that you like, or 50% of things that you like, as opposed to someone who's not in your best interest whatsoever. I mean, if we're looking at the presidential race, I mean, that the stark contrast couldn't be more dividing as far as what the president wants, or who he speaks to and who he doesn't. He's divisive. He has no empathy whatsoever. He's not for urban communities whatsoever. He loves pitting the haves against the have-nots. He likes picking winners and losers, and that's just not what we need in our nation. So sometimes you have to look past the big picture. We didn't do that back in 2016. We got a lot of folks who got upset about Bernie Sanders not being the nominee, and they sat home. They didn't go vote at all. I know they didn't vote for Trump, but they didn't go vote, which was almost like a vote for Trump. We just can't have it anymore.
Vote for Trump, yeah.
we can't have it anymore. And sometimes you live and learn, you learn your lesson, and then you see what we have to do for the greater good. So our number one candidate doesn't always win, but our issues need to win. That should be more important than the person.
Issues need to win. That's good, Mikkel. Final thoughts, and Mikkel, that won't be your final thought. I'll come back to you and close out with you. I'd like to get final thoughts from Varsha. What are your final thoughts about what you want to tell your peers about what is important and why should they vote?
So one thing that I'm really like, and everyone who knows me knows this, I'm extremely passionate about politics. I can talk someone's year out about, I can sit and compare, campaign promises to what was actually delivered. Like, I can do that all day. But so the thing for me is, I think it's really important to be vocal about your beliefs. Like, I even have it in my Instagram bio, that I'm like blue all the way, or liberal all the way. It doesn't matter what country, just liberal in my beliefs. And I just want it to be a safe place. I want myself to be a safe place to talk about politics, to have, conversations about it. And it would be great to have, and there's so many other, wonderful young people who are also just so vocal about it and are so willing to have conversations about it. Because I think the best way to get information and to understand more about an issue or something that could be related to you is to talk to someone who knows about it, or anyone, who has an opinion about it, and get to know more and formulate your own opinions and your own thoughts. Because it can get really confusing to have all of that information thrown at you in a, in like news formats and just social media, just, throwing information at you. It's great to have conversations with people to really understand what you stand for and just, what issues you want. And, Mikkel talking about, supporting someone, even if they're not your first choice, if they have even 50% of what you want to see, you're going to vote for them. Why would you not vote at all, or vote for someone who has 10% of what you want to see rather than, the next best? It's really, politics is always the next best, and you're trying to make the best of the options. And unfortunately, sometimes the options are not the best, but you still need to find light in it and choose the best from the options that are presented.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Varsha. Michaelin, forgive me for not respecting your and Commissioner Lowry's titles. I want to seem more personable so that the young adults that are watching can make the connection with you. Michaelin, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts, and I'm sure it's going to be reflected with everyone. Voter registration ends October 5th. Please get your people out to register. Even if you're not able to vote, personally commit to getting 5 people out there. Fill out your census. This is why we can't have nice things. Hashtag. We need to complete that census because we need to get some money in our city, in our neighborhoods, in our state. Like, we are not even at 60% in the city filling it out. So please fill it out. Y'all know Memphis is, we need some help, y'all. So register to vote, fill out your census, go vote on November 3rd, but also remain engaged even if your ideal situation does not pan out. Because it's a long-term thing. It's not a one and done. We want to normalize voting and being civically engaged and not having it as a taboo type subject. Talk about it with your parents. Talk about it with your family members. Yes, teachers, educators watching, you can talk about it at school too. It's about engagement. It's about exposure. It's about information. So we just have to normalize it. And then maybe we won't have a lot of people feeling in the dark about what's going on, because it's something that we talk about, just like church, just like we're talking about things in the pandemic now. So we have to do our best to normalize it so it can become more comfortable for people to discuss.
One of the people that are watching the live stream, Drea CG, said we need to normalize genuine leadership. And so normalizing genuine leadership is right in line with the things that we've said not just for young adults, but for all of us. We'd love to see genuine leadership become a normalization. BJ, what are your final thoughts, and what would you say to your peers about what's important and why should they vote?
So again, thank you for this. I've taken away a lot from this. So I really want to say appreciate everyone on this. But final thought, honestly, if I could share anything with my peers, is more so just, I try to always promote staying in the moment and being present, but this is something that you have to pull yourself away from and say, what does my future look like? And I think a lot of people in my generation, it's fun right now. We're having fun. Life is, we're out of college, we just got a job. It's, who cares about that stuff type thing. But 4 years from now, we'll be 30, 29, 28. And it's one of those situations where if you do have kids, if you are paying property taxes, if you are doing these things, well, this is the moment that counts for it. So it's more so just pulling yourself back for a second and saying, how would this affect my future and how will it impact it? And again, I just want to say thank you for the perspective and allowing me to be a part of this.
So grateful to you for taking the time and then voicing the concern and the interest that you had in this. It's something that will be beneficial not only to the people that listen today, but for people that will listen to this going forward. So I appreciate you. Dr. Atwater, the elder of us in the group, what are your final thoughts and what would you say to a young adult about why they should vote?
My slogan in life is we play too much and we stay too long. So we're at the crossroad now, and we can no longer play hopscotch when we need to be playing chess. So we know our options. We need to be clear about what we need to do. We need to vote for that, and then we can come back and address other issues. Now, going back to what you said about the rapper, about what he said about we should make people demand our votes. Well, I believe in that 100%. So I sent a letter to Vice President Biden asking him for his commitment on reparations. But I'm smart enough to know that we may not get that commitment, but we have to get Trump out of there first. And then I'll be his worst nightmare. So if I had to say anything to young people, please get engaged. Come to the table. Vote in record numbers. Come up, young people, and show up and show out. We need you.
Wonderful. And as we go around and have the last final thoughts, I'd like to extend the invitation to those of you that are watching on Facebook, on my page at tracytrowe.com or troweandco. And if you have a comment or a final question you would like to share, please enter it now and I'll be happy to share it. Mia, in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. What are your final thoughts that you'd like to share, and why should someone in your age group vote?
I feel like in life, we can't always have it our way or have what we want, but I agree. With politics, it's the same thing, and we should treat it as such. So no, you might not get that person you want, but we have to move on and find the best option. I think what we can do is vocalize it more and brag about it. It's a right, and we should be proud to be able to vote and change whatever we feel like needs to be changed. So I think it's important to vote, and I think we should hold our friends accountable. And yeah, October 5th, like she said.
That's good. Commissioner Lowry, final thoughts, and what do you have to share about why it's important for young adults, for all of them, but particularly young adults, to vote?
We spoke about a lot of myriad of things throughout this call. So thank you all again for putting this on and having these type of engagements and conversations. I think are needed because this is how you get more people involved. So I want to just leave us with this. If everybody on this call or whoever's listening went and talked to 5 of our friends about voting, voter registration, the importance of being selected on juries, vote in local elections, what that can do. And then we just need to grow it organically that way. You know, sometimes we need like this mass movement, and that'll be great. But sometimes we need just these kind of small, intimate conversations, just like this. And then for us, maybe coming upon ourselves to say, hey, to 5 people, did you hear about the conversation that just took place? Did you know, are you registered to vote? Do you know the deadline may be? We need to pass it along organically, just like that. That's what kind of makes it cool. Not that, you know, to somebody's point made earlier, that's what makes it cool, because you're hearing it from your friends, you're hearing from your peers. It's not someone telling you, go vote, go do this and go do that, without understanding what impact it has on us. So let's start there. Let's continue in that. Presidential election are always good times to have this conversation, because the nation is engaged, but we'll have local elections soon after that. You'll be voting for county commissioners, school board members before you know it, local judges before you know it, a DA before you know it. So let's start that momentum now and grow it organically, so we'll have some more say so and be more invested to what's happening in our communities. And it starts with conversations just like this. So thank you again for having us.
It has been my absolute pleasure. I'd like to thank all of you for participating tonight, not just for the time, but for the investment. This has been an investment to engage our young adults. We wanted to have a conversation with them and for them, and I think we've done just that. I am grateful to all of you for making the time tonight to participate. I'm grateful for those of you who joined us streaming live. I'd like to encourage you, as a participant in this platform and as a participant in this community, to know that the bridge is each of us. We are all part of the bridge. It takes every one of us to reach out and extend our hand to someone and be a listener and also a doer of what we're saying. It is incumbent upon each of us to make positive change by taking action. We've got to take the action. So make sure that you are registered to vote. If you're an existing voter, check your registration status. It is important for you to know that you have not been purged. That is not conspiracy, that is fact. Check your registration status. Know for yourself that October 5th is the deadline for registration, whether you plan to vote in person or not. October 5th is the deadline. Check on the platforms for the people that you're interested in and educate yourself about what's happening with the election. Go to the websites of the participants and those that are nominated and find out what their policies are. That information is publicly available. So inform yourself that you can make an informed and incisive vote. It is your right, it is your choice, and it is your voice. I would like to thank all of you for joining me tonight for Why Should I Vote? A discussion with young adults for young adults. This is Tracy T. Rowe. I'm over and out. And one of the things I say on weekdays, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, when I go live at lunch at Tracy T. Rowe and Co., is that you matter. You matter to me. And there's nothing you can do about it. I want to make sure that you make every day amazing and you live like it's a gift, because it truly is. Thanks so much and have a wonderful evening.